We have an amazing guest in the building with us, and I'm going to do my best to give a sound introduction, but I'm going to obviously rely on you to give us your version of your introduction. I have Mucha Mlingo in the studio with us, and she's here to discuss emotional intelligence at the workplace. Emotional intelligence at the workplace. Now, if you're wondering, what is emotional intelligence and what does that have to do with the workplace? We're going to get into that. But before we do that, I'm going to allow this lovely lady. Thank you so much for coming on time
Thank
too.
you.
I appreciate it. We're so excited to have you here. We've been waiting for this conversation all week. And I know that you're going to give us some gems of information just based on your experience and your education. So I'm very, very excited. So for those who don't know who you are, please introduce yourself and let us know what you do.
My name is Mucha Mlingo, and I am really excited to be here today and looking forward to the conversation we're going to have.
Fantastic.
I am an emotional intelligence coach.
Okay.
So that is what I do. I am also the founder and lead change maker of an organization called PTS Africa.
Okay.
And we call ourselves the Emotional Intelligence Company. So we're all about emotional intelligence. I describe myself as an EQ fanatic.
Wow.
Because I really do believe that emotional intelligence is a game-changing skill.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to the conversation we're going to have about why I think that, what it is, for those who are wondering, okay, what is this EQ stuff?
Right.
But yeah, so that's who I am. I am also a wife and a mom of 2 boys who I think are still up listening somewhere
Oh,
with
right.
their daddy. So yes, yeah. So
Fantastic.
that's a bit about me.
Okay, now you mentioned something that I found interesting. You mentioned the term emotional intelligence fanatic.
Yes.
How did you get this title? And what is it that about EQ that excites you so much?
So it is a self-appointed title,
Right.
if I can say that.
Yes.
I call myself that because, I really am fanatical about emotional intelligence because in my experience, it has transformed my life. And I know that emotional intelligence has the power to transform all our lives.
Right.
Because it's really just being in tune with who you are on the inside, not just the surface. We like to play on the surface. We have a bent towards superficiality. But emotional intelligence is about going deep to understand your emotions and understanding that knowing yourself, self-awareness is a powerful tool. So I think that's why I get so excited about EQ. And I'm excited because it's a skill, and a skill means anyone can learn it, right?
Right.
So regardless of where you are, if you were to rate yourself on your EQ levels, even if you rate yourself low, it's a skill that you can develop.
Right.
And according to all the research out there, including the World Economic Forum report, it is a key skill for this season, as we navigate the pandemic and beyond, as we look at this 4th industrial revolution. So that's why I call myself an EQ fanatic.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes.
Okay, now for those of us who are still trying to figure out what EQ is, we prefaced it by saying it stands for emotional intelligence.
Yes.
But in a nutshell, how would you summarize exactly what EQ is? Because I know when you think of IQ, that's very plain and simple.
Yeah.
When you hear IQ, we know what that means.
Yeah.
But EQ is something a little bit different.
Yeah.
How would you actually describe what EQ is?
So emotional intelligence is really being able to understand your emotions. So it's, being aware of what you're feeling, understanding what it is, what does it mean. It's about using that information appropriately, right? It's about using it to make decisions. And it's about being able to connect with the emotions of others as well and actually be able to influence them in a positive way. If I think of a simple definition, emotional intelligence is being smart with your feelings.
Wow.
Yes, it's being smart with it's understanding that we were designed and we have an emotional part of the brain and a rational part of the brain.
Okay.
And so emotional intelligence is about using both.
Okay.
There's a quotation I really love. My mind is blank right now. I can't remember who said it, but it says this idea that emotional intelligence isn't the triumph of the brain over the heart or the heart over the brain. It is the collaboration of both.
Of both.
Yes,
I
it's
see.
being able to use both your rational and your emotional as you make decisions, as you navigate life, as you interact with others.
Right.
So yeah, EQ is just being smart with your feelings. It's understanding that they were created for a purpose. So use them.
So it's not about ignoring your feelings.
No.
Because sometimes some people might try and create the narrative of if you choose to suppress your feelings, then you're intelligent. Then you're emotionally intelligent. So it's basically being very aware of your feelings and feeling them, and it's okay. But then now, what do I do after feeling?
100%. And actually, when you suppress them, that is a lack of emotional intelligence.
Wow.
Oh,
Because here's the thing. You suppress for how long?
Yeah.
Right?
Until you explode.
Until you explode.
Right, yeah.
And when you explode, that's just a mess. So actually suppressing your emotions is a lack of emotional intelligence. And yet so many of us do that because really and truly we have not really been taught that our emotions are important. We've seen our emotions as a bad thing. Right? We see emotions as good and bad. But there's no bad emotion. It's just data.
Right.
It's insight.
Right.
When I'm angry because there's something that is in my way. There's something that's blocking my progress.
Right.
So what I need to do is tune in, understand why I'm angry, and determine what to do about it.
I see.
And that's emotional intelligence.
I see.
Wow.
So I guess just to expand on this conversation, on a day-to-day level, let's say I wake up in the morning, how functional, how beneficial is emotional intelligence on a day-to-day basis? Like, what situations would I be able to say, you know what, in this instance, I'm using my emotional intelligence, you know?
Can I give you a really good example of my day-to-day?
Please.
And how I have practiced emotional intelligence
Yes.
so many times throughout the course of this day.
Okay.
So I kicked off the morning with an event that we're currently running, an EQ conference. And when we were starting, the tech wasn't working.
Okay.
Right? And so in that moment when the tech is not working, the temptation is to throw a tantrum, to lose your cool. But practicing emotional intelligence means just taking a breath and asking yourself, okay, this is not going the way I had planned.
Yes.
What can I do about it?
Right.
Made some decisions and we moved on, right? Throughout the event. Little things, and it's just the smallest things that come up, right?
Right.
It's like that mosquito.
Yes.
Buzzing in your ear. And it's your ability to ask yourself, what am I feeling? What can I do about it? I mean, that really becomes your mantra if you're practicing emotional intelligence.
Right.
Fast forward, my morning is over. I have a client engagement in the afternoon. So it's customer service week. So I was running a customer service training for a client.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, just up the road here on Mombasa Road.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
And I'm in a cab. I decided I'll get there by cab. In the cab, we use the bypass. And as we drive down the bypass, which is normally so open, I don't know what's going on. There's like back-to-back traffic.
Yes.
I'm looking at the time and thinking,
Oh, Lord.
what am I going to do? Right?
Yeah, Mombasa Road is temperamental. There's days when it just works with you. Other days, it just decides to be stubborn. Yeah.
And so in that moment, is that not another moment to practice emotional intelligence, right?
Yeah.
Take a breath. Okay, yes, I could throw a tantrum. How is it going to help?
I know.
I
yeah.
know.
How is it going to help? So I'm having a conversation with the Uber driver. I'm like, okay, dude, I have so many minutes. I think at that point I had about 20 minutes. I have 20 minutes to get to my client and this is not working. So we had just passed Langata on the bypass. So he turned into some side road, did some MacGyvering. Next thing we're now on Langata Road.
Yeah.
Right? And we're now going to have to come and use Mombasa Road directly,
Yes.
right? And I'm just breathing. My phone rings. It's the client.
Oh boy.
My heart starts pumping. Emotional intelligence again.
Yeah.
Do I put it to voicemail? Act like I don't
Do I
see the
answer?
call? Do I
not?
answer? When I
Yeah.
answer, what do I say?
Yeah.
Right.
I need to manage my emotions, but I also need to manage hers.
Of
That's
course.
it.
Right?
Yeah.
Because she's stressed. She's
That's
thinking,
it, yeah.
where are you?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I pick up the phone, my calmest voice, slight challenge on the road, but I'm on my way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will be there.
Yeah.
And I give her an ETA, and I extend it a little because
Yes.
we look at what maps the maps say how long it will be.
Yes.
We extend it a little, right?
Yeah.
So in that conversation, I'm practicing emotional intelligence.
I see.
I get to the client. Okay, I'm just like, oh, but there's no time to because I'm late.
Of
right?
course.
So I have to
Just take
dive
the
into the
business.
training.
Yeah.
Set up as we're setting up. Today has just been an anti-tech day. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine.
Kwamas.
As we're setting up the tech, it's just like, yeah, today we are on your case.
This is where these are the moments where you say the Lord is testing me today.
I tell you. So we set up. So what they wanted was I'm facilitating a live session, but they had they are members of their team from across the country who are on Zoom.
Yeah.
And it's just not connecting.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? And then my laptop is not working. But I can throw a tantrum.
That's it.
Or I can keep
And
my
then
cool.
what?
Yeah.
Take a breath.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Now,
And then I'm in the zone and carried on. And so I managed to facilitate the session as they were fixing the tech. Once the tech was ready, brought the guys who were online back on. Practicing emotional intelligence, that's what it is. It is a moment by moment throughout your day.
Yes.
Being alive to what you're feeling.
That
Because
makes sense.
emotions drive behavior.
Yeah, precisely.
Wow.
And when you're not paying attention, it's like you're driving blindfold. I mean, who would do that?
I imagine, yeah. I like. Now I'm gonna pause you right there because we need to take a
Yes.
quick break. But if you are just joining us, we have got a great show lined up for you. I cannot wait to sink our teeth into this conversation a little bit further. We've got Mucha Mlingo in the studio talking to us about emotional intelligence, specifically in the workplace. We are the adults in the room. Don't go anywhere. Mlingo, who is the founder and lead change maker of PTS Africa Emotional Intelligence Coach. I am so excited to get into this conversation, and I know it's going to be very beneficial for anybody that's listening, anybody that is unaware of what emotional intelligence is and what it looks like and the role that it can play in not just our personal lives, but also in our professional lives. Now, this is obviously a very big title, and I want to know, before we actually get into the accolades and the experience that you have, how did you actually get into this space? How did that journey look like for you?
So, my journey into emotional intelligence actually has been an interesting one. And one of the things I always say is I'm one of those people who's kind of found myself in my 40s.
Right.
When I've come to the realization of, what it is that I, love doing. I think another reason why I call myself this fanatic, because I've really fallen in love with the work that I do.
Right.
I moved to Kenya in 2008.
Okay.
I'm originally from Zimbabwe.
All right.
Thank you.
And-
That's a question I wanted to ask.
I see. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and I moved here with my husband because he was coming here for work.
Right.
And arrived in Kenya. We'd never been to Kenya before. We were really excited
Wow.
about moving to Kenya.
Wow.
And I was at home for a while. We have, at the time, I was expecting our first son. Then we had our second. And when I decided to come rejoin the job market, I found that there was just nothing that was a good fit for me.
Right.
So my background is in financial services.
Okay.
My last role before we moved to Kenya, I worked in the training department for a financial services company. We used to live in the UK. And so when I started looking for work, the financial services industry here in Kenya is not as heavily regulated. So the kind of work I did wasn't really available. What I found wasn't a good fit. And then on a lark, a friend asked me, someone I'd met at church, gotten to know, knew my background, asked me to do some training for their company.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did it, and I will never forget receiving that first check.
Yeah, I can
was just
imagine.
Like, what?
Yeah.
I actually do this for a living,
living,
for
yeah.
real. I always say I'm so grateful to Kenya because Kenya awoke in me that spirit of entrepreneurship.
Right.
That I don't know that I never imagined myself running my own business.
Right.
Never.
Right.
So that's how my journey started. And because I worked in financial services and sales, that's what I did. Did sales training, started doing customer services training. And I always wanted to figure out what was this X factor? Why is it there are these salespeople who are just exceptional? Right? Who are just able to consistently close big deals. And I realized it's not their academics. It's not how long they've been in business, because you could get someone who's relatively new who still is a superstar salesperson. So in all the work I did, I was always looking, what is it that makes someone come to our training and really embrace what we teach and run with it?
Right.
And then I read a book by Daniel Goleman,
Okay.
and I was like, this is it.
Yeah, this is the answer.
This is it. This is the X factor. And I read about Daniel Goleman's research and just really his understanding of emotional intelligence and why it can be more important than IQ.
Right.
And that started me on my journey.
Your journey, yeah.
Yes. And I fell in love, I like to say.
Yeah.
And it really shifted my career, because now that is my area of focus.
Right.
So we still provide training in sales, in customer service, in leadership, but everything we do is rooted in this methodology, these principles of emotional intelligence, based on the understanding that emotions drive behavior.
Right.
So if we're not paying attention, if we're not tapping into our emotions, what are we doing?
I see.
Yeah.
I
Someone
see.
sits in class and leaves, nothing has changed.
Right.
Yeah. So
right.
that's how I
You
fell
stepped
into
this
this
space.
EQ stuff.
Oh, fantastic.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay.
We both looked at each other.
I like the way you've said emotions drive behavior. So let's get into it.
Mm.
Growing up, and this is something that I've been fascinated by. You know, nobody taught us how to read the room. Nobody said, Arnold, this is how you read the room.
Yes.
When you go somewhere, this is what you do and this is what you should not do. And in my 30s, I'm like, we need to learn how to read the room for basic consistency at the workplace, at home, whether it's in relationships, friendships. So please, how can one learn to read the room? Simply.
And
what is reading the room?
So I like the way you said simply.
Yeah.
Right? And I want to say the same, simply.
Yes.
You need to pay attention.
I see.
And I know it sounds so basic
Right.
as an answer, but it's true. We need to pay attention. We don't pay attention. Often when we are in an environment, when we are in a room, we're focused on what am I going to say next? We're focused on how do I look? We're focused on how does everyone think about me? What is everyone saying about me?
Right.
You know, what are their perceptions? Oh, are they going to be impressed? Are they going to be... There's so much running around in your head that you are not actually fully present.
Yeah.
So the first thing, reading the room, and reading the room is just simply being able to see where people are at,
Okay.
to take the emotional temperature in the room.
Right.
That's what reading
Right.
the room is.
Yeah.
And it starts by paying attention. And paying attention means listening, genuinely listening to what is being said and what is not being said.
I like that you said that. Yes.
Yes.
The concept of what's not being
Yes.
said. Yeah.
And if you think about it, you may have heard this idea that body language is about 70% of communication.
Yes.
So more is being said
That's
with-
not being spoken.
out being
Yeah, without being spoken.
Wow.
So reading the room is about being able to connect with people and read or understand what they are not saying, right?
Yeah.
Are they making eye contact with you? Are they having side conversations? How are they seated? Do they look relaxed? Do they look tense? And those are all things that you can pick up from someone's body language, right? What are their facial expressions? Do they look engaged and interested? Do they look like it's
I'm
just
just-
a body that is here?
I'm just
Yeah.
waiting for you to finish.
I'm just waiting for
go.
it to be done.
Yeah.
Right? So the first thing is to really get into the habit of being present
Right.
and pay attention.
I see.
So you're paying attention to the words being said, how they're being said, and you're paying attention to everything else. Because people say so much with their body language.
I see.
Is someone looking like they are kind of open and accepting of what you're saying? Or are they looking like they're tense and closed off, hands crossed, that kind of thing?
Right.
So that is a key part of reading the room.
Right.
Another key part of reading the room is stop talking. Wow.
Wow.
The way you said that with
Stop
conviction.
talking. Yes, stop talking.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you're talking, you're listening less. You're paying less attention, right? So as much as is possible, get into the habit of listening more and really listening. I like to talk about how the dictionary describes or defines hearing as opposed to listening. Hearing is described as something like the act of perceiving sound. So that means as long as you're not hearing impaired, when there is sound, you will hear it.
Right.
Listening is defined as paying close attention so you can hear.
Right? Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So it's different. Listening means you are paying attention, right? So stop talking,
I like it.
right?
I like
Stop
it.
talking and allow others to share.
Yeah.
And here's the thing.
Yeah.
One of the things I learned about learning to read the room, be comfortable with the quiet.
Okay.
Because the other thing we do is as soon as there's quiet, I have to come in and say something.
we can't let any awkward silence.
Yes,
Yeah.
to feeling. but it's okay
Yeah.
for there to be quiet.
Okay, I like it. Now we're gonna take another quick break, but when we get back, we're gonna now actually dive into how this plays a role specifically within a professional setting, because that's obviously where a big focus of your career
Yes.
and your work is. And I'm excited to sort of see how this translates on a business level, on a corporate level. If you are just joining us, we are the adults in the room. We are talking about emotional intelligence specifically in the workplace, and we've got the founder and lead changemaker of PTS Africa, Miss Mucha Mlingo, in the studio with us to dissect this conversation. You're not going to want to miss it. Don't go anywhere. To shine bright like a diamond, specifically in the workplace. Well, if you do, then you are definitely in the right place. We have an amazing guest in the building with us, Mucha Mlingo, who is the founder and lead changemaker of PTS Africa, an organization that specializes in emotional intelligence coaching. Now, we've spoken a little bit about what emotional intelligence is. You've told us how you ended up in this space. So now, how does emotional intelligence actually translate into the work environment, and why do you think it's such a key role that organizations need to pay attention to?
So emotional intelligence is made up of a number of competencies, all of which are really important at work. So self-awareness is one of those key components of emotional intelligence, and that's really being aware of your emotions and how your emotions are showing up in the way you interact with others.
Right.
And I think that's really important at work, both from a leader's perspective and then just individuals in the workplace, knowing that this is how I'm feeling and this is how it can potentially show up. I can potentially be a little touchy today because I'm feeling this way. And that impacts how we interact in our relationships. And most of us are working in environments where you're interacting with others. So being self-aware is extremely important. Another key part of emotional intelligence is self-regulation.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So that speaks to the idea that, okay, I'm angry. But just because I feel angry doesn't mean that I must act out on how I feel. So self-regulation is about being able to,
powerful.
Pause, count to 10, take a walk, all of those things that you need to do to just bring your temperature down so that you don't just blow up. You don't just have those inappropriate conversations. You don't just, speak to people anyhow. So that, again, is a key component at work because, again, we're interacting with others. We're interacting with people as part of your team. You're interacting with customers. Self-regulation is really important with customers because customers can be stressful.
They really can.
They really can. And so being able to just pause and remind yourself that just because I feel this way doesn't mean I must act that way.
I see.
And so for me, I think emotional intelligence really helps on the relationship front, just really being keen on how we interact with others. Another side of emotional intelligence is the effectiveness. So individuals who are high in emotional intelligence are more effective. So that's about their capacity to generate results. And that's because they are utilizing both the rational and emotional, and they're better able to make decisions.
I see.
So if you think about it, decision making, effectiveness, those are key, skills at work, being able to, have your work before you do that work. And especially for those of us who are working from home, you're not being supervised by anyone. Being able to get down and get your work done and plan your day and be effective, be efficient. Those are all elements of emotional intelligence. So not only does emotional intelligence help us at work in the sense that it helps us in relationships with others, it also helps us in relationship with ourselves.
I see.
Right? To be more effective, to be more intentional, to ensure that I make better decisions. The last part of emotional intelligence is this idea of being purpose-driven. Individuals who are high in emotional intelligence are purpose-driven. So that means they don't just live in the moment. A lot of the choices they make, the decisions and the things they do are aligned to their core purpose, to their reason why, right? So it allows you to transcend the moment.
I see.
And think about the long-term impact of the things you're doing, the long-term impact of the things you might want to say, the long-term impact of everything you're doing in the moment. And you're able on a daily basis to bring your purpose to play.
I see. Okay.
So in so many ways, EQ is powerful. And what we know from research is that purpose is a key driver of performance. So even in organizations, when individuals are very clear what their purpose is, when they're very clear what the organizational purpose is, it actually drives performance.
Yeah.
It increases engagement. So these are just some of the ways that emotional intelligence is helpful in the workplace, both for the individual and for the company itself.
Right.
And what's interesting is that organizations with higher levels of emotional intelligence have better bottom lines.
I see.
So there is a direct relationship to profit, right?
And you can quite literally track it.
You can track it.
Right, because I remember before you mentioned, I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but you sort of made a connection between emotional intelligence and data.
Yes.
What is that relationship between emotional intelligence and data? Are you able to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so what I was saying is that emotions are data.
Right.
They are. We like to think of our emotions as good, right? So excitement, joy, and bad. Anger, frustration, fear.
Right.
But emotions are data. They're just insight. Your emotions are chemicals coursing through your body, letting you know what the state of play is.
Right.
And so the idea of emotional intelligence is to mine that data.
And
use it appropriately. Yeah. So I feel angry. I feel fear. Fear is a good one, right? So fear is an indication that something is potentially at risk.
Right.
That's why we feel afraid.
Right.
Something is potentially at risk. I could lose something. That's why we feel fear. So the question is to ask yourself, what is that? Why do I feel that way? And then really begin to do the work of understanding why. So fear isn't a bad thing. It's just a warning light. You know, you wouldn't look at the fuel light in your car and say, this fuel light is so bad. No.
I know.
It's giving you insight.
It's an indication.
It's giving you good. It's letting you know, because if it doesn't let you know, you run out of fuel, the car stops.
Yeah.
It's the same with your emotions. If you don't pay attention to them, it's disaster.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So that's why we say emotions are data.
How would an employer improve self-awareness at the workplace? And what does self-awareness look like simply? Because, this is a word that we've not throw around, but we use every day.
Yes.
I use it almost all the time when I'm expressing myself. But somebody is out there and they're like, okay, I know myself, but do I really know myself? So 2 questions. Self-awareness in simple layman's language. And number 2, how can an employer improve self-awareness at the workplace?
So when you're asking how can an employer, are you talking about the environment or for themselves or the environment?
For the environment,
okay. So I think the first thing, and let me tackle that last one first, how can an employer improve self-awareness? I think the first thing is modeling that behavior.
As in,
they must practice self-awareness themselves.
I see what you're saying. Okay, no,
right?
I was thinking you're saying modeling the poor environment.
No,
but what you're saying makes
modeling
sense.
self-awareness because, it said, there's a friend of mine who says this all the time, monkey see, monkey do.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so I think for me, the first thing that an employer needs to do is they need to model this self-awareness. So they need to begin the work of understanding themselves. So what is self-awareness? Self-awareness is being able to be brutally honest with yourself about your emotions, about your triggers, about your strengths, your weaknesses. It's doing the work of introspection, and it's digging deeper beneath what is at the surface layer.
Right.
It's going down to the root. So the root is your identity.
Right.
It is your values.
Yeah.
It is the very things that impact how you show up on the surface.
Yes.
We like to describe people as an iceberg, right? So if you look at an iceberg, the tip of the iceberg is a very small part of it. And often that's where we focus.
Right.
But what's beneath the surface is so much bigger. And so what's beneath the surface for us as humans is our identity, is our core beliefs. Right?
Yeah.
Who I believe I am, why I believe that way. And a lot of that is shaped by our upbringing. It's shaped by the experiences we've had. Do you know that there are so many of us who are caught in patterns of behavior?
Yeah.
And we don't even know why.
Yeah.
You find yourself doing the same thing. It doesn't even work, but tomorrow you'll do it again.
Again. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, very true. Very true.
No results, but
you'll do it again.
Yeah.
And it's because we've not done that work of self-awareness to get to understand why is it that I am behaving that way in the first place.
I see.
And for me, that's what self-awareness is. And I believe self-awareness is a superpower.
Oh, it's a superpower. Okay, hold that thought.
It is.
You were saying self-awareness is a superpower. Those are the words of Mucha Mlingo, the founder and lead changemaker of PTS Africa. She's here to dissect what emotional intelligence is and how employers and corporations can leverage this to improve their bottom line. Do not go anywhere. We are the adults in the room, and we're going to be right back. Good vibes for a good conversation today. It is Tuesday, the 5th of October, and we have a special guest in the building with us discussing emotional intelligence. We have Mucha Mlingo, who is the founder and lead changemaker of PTS Africa. If you're not sure what PTS Africa is, it's an organization that specializes in emotional intelligence coaching, something that is very vital. We're learning for not just your personal life, but also how this bleeds into your professional and your work environment and how you relate to one another. Now, before we went on this break, Rigo, you had a question for our lovely guest.
Yes. Thank you so much, first of all, about that, simple explanation on self-awareness, because we need to be self-aware.
It's simple, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah, and during the break, you said something very important. You said it's hard.
It is.
It's not a truth that we like to accept.
Right.
But it's important because it makes life easier.
It is.
So what does a toxic work environment look like? And in terms of the employees, how does a toxic work environment feel like? Because, people talk about toxic work environment. I can't work in a toxic work environment. I left a toxic work environment. And after that, please share with us how one can, quit their job because they feel like I'm in a toxic work environment and it's too much without burning bridges.
I like that. So, a toxic work environment. So let me just mention some indicators or how we would describe a toxic work environment. I think one is, it's a space where no one can share, can speak, can give their opinion, can have a different opinion. So there is this air of oppression in that environment. And it's one of those things that is unsaid but tangible.
Okay.
Right? So you just cannot share, you cannot disagree, you cannot dissent. What the powers that be say goes. Right? So that's one of the things that is prevalent in a toxic work environment. Another is this air of confusion. It's like no one seems to know what exactly they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to do it.
Right.
It's just like a hit and miss. We're all trying to figure it out. There's no clear structure. There's no clear guidelines. And, it may sound like something simple, but as humans, we thrive in a space of order.
Yes.
We thrive in knowing where the clear boundaries are.
Right.
So an environment where today we're going this way, tomorrow we're going this way, and it's usually based on the leader or the powers that be's, how they feel that time. Right? That is a toxic work environment. Another sign of a toxic work environment is one where verbal abuse is okay.
Oh, wow.
I was having a conversation, as I mentioned, I was doing some training today, and we're having a conversation on how to deal with customers who are, being shouting at you, using inappropriate language. And it's one thing when it's a customer, but can you imagine working in an environment where it's the people you work with?
Imagine.
And it's maybe sometimes someone that you report to,
Right.
who feels it's appropriate to just shout at you, to storm in, storm out. Tell you off in front of everyone, embarrass you, so that is a toxic work environment,
Right.
where, you kind of come in and you're walking on eggshells. And one of the things you said is, how do people feel when they're in that environment? So they feel oppressed. They feel like they have no way of expressing themselves, sharing their thoughts. So like I said, there's that feeling of oppression. There's a feeling of walking on eggshells because anything you say can be a trigger that can cause an explosion, right? And then there's also a fear of a lack of psychological safety. Because often in those toxic work environments, what happens is you're usually controlled by the fact that you could lose your job. So any minute, so you're always thinking, today could be the day that I'm told you just pack your bags and go.
Oh my goodness.
So there's this fear, there's this lack of psychological safety.
Yeah.
So you're feeling as though at any moment the rug can be pulled from under you, and you're expected to work in an environment like that.
Yeah.
And
Right.
be productive.
And be productive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that feeling of not being safe, a feeling of fear, right? A feeling. And then another thing that's prevalent in toxic work environments is a culture of distrust, mistrust.
Right.
So
right.
even amongst colleagues, you can't really say what you think because you never know. This one maybe the boss's spy, or maybe she may, and at any minute someone can stab you in the back. So you're constantly on guard.
Yeah.
So there's that feeling of having to be on guard, having to protect your territory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now all of those things they mess up your mind. And what usually happens is heightened anxiety. You get people feeling depressed as a result of being in such spaces.
Right.
Because you can't thrive in a space like that.
Yeah.
You really
yeah,
can't.
Yeah.
And
Well,
So how do you quit?
yes.
Without burning the bridges?
I think that, emotional intelligence helps us to really think through the choices we're making, right? So for me, I think someone who's working in an environment like that, I think it's important to get out because you
see.
don't realize the toll it has on you mentally
Right.
and emotionally. Somehow it becomes normal to you.
yeah. Yeah. This is the new
think
new normal way.
It becomes normal.
Yeah.
And you see the challenge is that begins to impact you internally without you realizing.
Right.
So you
right.
do want to get out, but obviously it's not so simple, right? That I'm just gonna say I'm
done.
That's
I'm
it.
done.
I'm done.
Yeah. I'm packing my bags.
I'm packing my bags.
Yeah.
So I think for me is work on an exit strategy.
Okay.
So work on an exit strategy. Find a way to bite your tongue, to whatever you need to do so that you can have an exit strategy.
Yeah.
Because you never know how the individuals in that space could potentially influence your ability to get work later. This Nairobi is just small.
It is.
right?
Yo,
It really
Nairobi.
is.
And the way that in many instances, if you stay within the same industry, but maybe you switch organizations,
Yes.
everybody knows each
Yes.
other. And a lot of the time
Yes.
even if you don't necessarily get a recommendation, your potential employer will do their own investigations
Yes.
and determine
Yes.
what kind of an employer were you at your previous job.
100%. So don't have an exit strategy. So identify what options you have in terms of other roles, identify what skills you need to develop so that you can get those roles, and never ever ever, even the day you leave, even the day you get the other job, bad mouth where you're leaving.
I see.
Do not.
Very
Yes.
important.
Do not. Do not, whether it's to someone else, whether it's on social media, do not.
Right.
Because you
right.
just never know how that can go around. There's individuals who've had job offers, signed contracts,
Yeah.
and it's been revoked
Yeah.
as a result of how they spoke badly about, former. And you
Employers.
may be justified.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
It was a toxic work environment, but at the end of the day, you have to be very, you have to jealously guard your career. And remember that this is just a step on a journey.
Right.
So don't allow that step to derail you.
Yeah.
But make an exit plan.
And I like what you're saying because I think there is value. I think even taking that step and saying I'm not going to badmouth my previous employer is an exercise of emotional intelligence.
it
It's
is.
recognizing that even though I feel slighted and I feel like I've been hurt by this organization, I'm also respecting the fact that this could come back and bite me later.
And it
you know?
will. Hey, social media doesn't forget.
It never does. Yo, if there's
It
one thing
will.
we've learned.
And nowadays, people look on social media, right? When they're doing those reference checks, they check.
Right.
Yeah.
They're
right.
looking to see some of the things you say. So have an exit plan. Identify the skills that you need, the experience you need to be able to move from there, right? And as you move, don't burn relationships. Maintain those relationships.
Yeah,
And you never know when the opportunity to leverage those will come up.
Right,
again.
right. I see,
Yeah.
I see. So we're almost scheduled to take another quick break, but I want to see if there's anything on social media that we're seeing. There's nothing yet, but keep the
Not
comment,
yet.
keep the
We
engagement
have
coming
a
in.
few, we have Tina saying, hey, I love this woman. She's giving you a big shout out.
Yes.
People are very excited. They're listening in.
And yes, and I think the reason why this conversation is so important is because, like you said, these are things that play into our day-to-day lives on a very subconscious level. A lot of the time, we don't even realize that maybe we're not exercising higher levels of emotional intelligence, and we can start to see how, like you said, you end up doing the same habits, the same things on a day-to-day basis without actually realizing that it's actually affecting you.
Yeah, let me ask one question and then you can answer when we come back from the break. Is, we experience challenges in the workplace, and the challenges we may experience are, people wanting to rise and become big and grow in their career. So how do you practice emotional intelligence when you're challenged by a coworker negatively? That's the question I want you to tell us when we come back.
So when we come back from this very small break, we're going to sink our teeth into Karigo's question and see if we can find an answer from our lovely esteemed guest here in the building. If you are just joining us, my name is Arnold, also known as the Bad Boy Sweetheart. I've got the Shy Mistress, also known as Karigo Gatera, in the studio. And of course, we have our esteemed guest, Mucha Mlingo, the founder and lead change maker of PTS Africa, here to discuss emotional intelligence, how it influences our workspace, our private lives, and how we can start to develop this skill, because she has said that it is a skill, which means it's something that we can acquire if we actually put in the time. So if you have a question for her, jump on our social media handles at SpiceFM KE. Ladies and gentlemen, it is exactly 9 p.m. on the dot on the 5th of October, and you are listening to us right here on Spice FM with the adults in the room. We have a very special guest in the building today who's here to talk about emotional intelligence and how it influences our lives and our work environments. We have Mucha Mlingo, the founder and lead changemaker of PTS Africa. We are getting into the nitty-gritty of how this impacts our lives, and we're going to be opening up the lines. We're going to get to her question that Karigo asked, but as soon as we finish this question, we're going to start hearing from you. I can already see all the people calling up. I can see people are excited to ask some questions, so we're definitely going to sink our teeth into that. But for those who've just joined us, please reiterate your question for us.
The question I asked is, at the workplace, we all want to rise. We want to grow, and more often than not, we find ourselves competing, which is healthy. I think competition is healthy.
Yeah.
However, how do you practice emotional intelligence in a very simple, basic way when you're experiencing a colleague who is challenging you, but it's negative? It's negative. They're challenging you negatively. How do you manage this?
I think that's emotional intelligence is at the core of dealing with any conflict.
Yes.
And why I say that is because we have to just really think through what is it that I ultimately want to achieve. So I move and respond rather than react based out of what's my ultimate objective, right? So what's my ultimate objective? So for me, when I'm handling conflict, the question I want to ask myself is, what do I really want? And I want to make sure that I am doing or making a decision that's rooted in the objective that I'm looking for.
Yes.
Right.
So it's really important to set boundaries. It's really important to set boundaries.
Yeah.
So where you feel as though this individual who's challenging you in a negative way has crossed a boundary of some sort, it's important that you let them know. Emotional intelligence is not being soft. It's not being a walkover. It's not saying, I'm just going to bite my tongue and be quiet. It's setting boundaries where it is required.
Yes.
Emotional intelligence is dealing decisively with an issue. It's just how you do it. So rather than just vomiting a whole load of nonsense that verbal diarrhea in reaction to what someone has done, it's maybe taking a breath, perhaps sometimes even retreating for a moment so that you can put your thoughts together and think about how you are going to deal with this issue. And then you deal with it and you let them know in no uncertain terms that you don't appreciate, whether it's the way they spoke or whether it's the thing they did. Emotional intelligence actually helps you to call people out.
I see.
It's just how you do it.
I see.
So for me, I feel where someone has challenged you and it is a clear crossing of boundaries, it's important that you let people know that this is the line.
I see.
And I don't appreciate when you cross it. And you can say that in a very measured way, in a very calm way. And I think that it shows so much more strength when you are in conflict, for you to actually take your voice a little lower.
I like even how you did that.
Yeah, take your voice a little lower.
Yeah.
And just say,
Yeah, I get
I don't
you.
appreciate
Yeah.
that tone of voice. I don't
Yeah.
appreciate it lands so much more
Yes.
than when you just start, I mean, who's listening when you go off on a tangent,
I
right?
get you. Yeah, yeah. Especially
It lands so much more.
especially when you're in a situation where maybe the other person is throwing the tantrum and you are the calm, collected
Yes.
one. It
Yes.
shows that you're in control
Yes.
of the situation.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
you're not shaken.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
You can go outside and throw a tantrum later.
Later.
Because at the end of the day, emotional intelligence isn't being a robot either.
Exactly
So it's
right.
not saying that those things don't exist. So sometimes you really have to hold on to whatever you need to hold on to.
Yes.
And then just in a cool, calm, collected way. And then afterwards you walk out here and you scream when you're outside.
You know what? I do that a lot.
Yeah, you let it out outside.
Yes.
Yeah, I
But
get
you've
you.
made your point and you've
Yeah.
made it clear that
Yeah.
you're not going to entertain that.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
I
You've
love it.
set a very the work of setting boundaries is just so important.
Yes.
And it's something that, to be honest, as Africans, we don't really know how to do. Because I think we
Okay.
feel as though you're being rude when you tell someone that it's not okay for you to just show up at my house
Right.
anytime.
That one.
Yeah.
That one right there. Yes.
Right? It's not okay.
Yes. Yeah.
But you feel like, oh, but you know, now they'll say, this one who lived in the UK has just
you've
become too
changed.
British. We must make an appointment to come and visit.
Of my own flesh and blood.
You know, telling me I can't come. What is that?
Yes.
We don't know how to set those boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's important to set them. And in the workplace, set them early.
Yes.
So that people know that this is the line in the sand.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I love it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's take some calls. Let's see what people are saying. Hello, Irene.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you this Tuesday?
I'm very good as well.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I hope everything's well with you. Do you have a question for our guest?
Well, I'm listening today. I love the show.
Yes.
I don't really have a question for her, but I'm listening and I'm really in love with the show today.
Thank you so much. We hope that you're picking up a few of the gems that she's dropping.
Definitely. We're learning a lot.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Just say hi to the ladies and have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Irene. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Take care. Now, I want to pick your brain on something as we're sort of speaking about this idea of the workplace and how the work environment or how emotional intelligence influences your work environment. What has been your observation specifically in coming back home and in working with organizations on the continent? What has been your observation in terms of how organizations value or what value they place on emotional intelligence and how that actually are they conscious of how this trickles down to their bottom line?
So I started on my emotional intelligence journey. It's been about 6 or 7 years now. And I remember very clearly feeling as though I was this lone voice in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Right.
Talking about how important this stuff was.
Yeah.
And, you know, people felt like, okay, yeah, but it's just like it's nice to have. It's not essential.
Right.
And the pandemic happened.
Wow.
Right.
And it's interesting for me, the
Wow.
pandemic has been an interesting season in the sense that, you know, last year it, you know, decimated business because, you know, companies are feeling as though, oh my gosh, we need to protect, we cannot afford to spend. And, you know, the soft skills are things that are not essential.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, come 2021,
Yeah.
the realization that people are struggling.
Yes.
People are struggling in
Yes.
work.
Yes.
And companies really came to the realization that this story we have told for decades, that when you come to work, you must leave your emotions at the door,
Right.
is the biggest lie we were ever told.
Yeah.
Right.
Because your emotions are an integral part of who you are.
Yeah.
And so, funnily enough, for us, emotional intelligence, the tide turned as a result of the pandemic.
I see.
I think now more than ever, people understand the value of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
It's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
still something that you have to sell and you have to spend some time showing, you know, the decision makers, the impact on the bottom line. But the companies we've worked with testify of this, how
Right.
it has made a really big difference in the organization.
Right.
emotions drive behavior. I cannot say it enough.
Right.
And what we know from our research, I'm part of a global organization called 6 Seconds. 6 Seconds is the world's largest emotional intelligence network.
Right.
And we do a lot of research and, trying to gather more insights into this thing called emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
So my company, we're the preferred partner for 6 Seconds in East Africa.
Right.
And one of the things that, came about as a result of research is around 60% of people's output at work
Yes.
is based by how they feel.
Yeah.
Right.
It is.
So if you come in and you're
Yeah.
having a bad day, that's going to directly affect how productive you are.
Does it not? Yes.
But it does. But it actually does. If we are really
does.
honest.
Yes,
if
it
I
does.
feel sad, now, how will I deliver a show?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when we don't equip
Wow.
our teams with, okay, I'm feeling sad,
Yeah.
but I have to work.
Yeah.
So how do I navigate? Because emotional intelligence is not just knowing, it's also navigating. It's also using that, moving through it.
Right.
If we're not teaching our teams how to do that navigation, then they are stuck.
Right. Right.
They are stuck in overwhelm.
Right.
They are stuck in anxiety,
Yeah.
which are the emotions we have felt as a result of the pandemic.
Yes.
Right.
How am I supposed to work if I can barely get myself out of bed
Yes.
in the morning?
Yes.
I see.
And the challenge we have is these are not things that we've been taught.
Right.
We've not been taught them in school. We've not been taught them in our homes. I mean, which individual grew up in a home where your parents, here on the African continent anyway, where your parents actively taught you that you must pay attention to your emotions.
Right.
So I think the tide is turning. I think that, a lot more people are talking about emotional intelligence and how important it is.
Right.
So the tide is turning. More and more
see.
organizations are seeing that it's important. When I'm going and doing a pitch for companies, I can see that it's no longer. It used to be the pitch was firstly trying to convince them that this thing is important.
Right.
Then help them to understand how we'll roll it out.
Right.
Now the conversation is a lot more around helping people to see that supporting your team to develop emotional intelligence cannot be done in 30 minutes.
Right. Right.
It can't.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of conversation. So the conversation no longer is, do you want it or not?
Yeah.
It's
now-
more of, okay, if you really want to transform the organization,
Yeah.
and I like to think of EQ as a language. If you want to equip your team with this new language, it can't be a one-off. It needs to be a consistent thing.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
I like that you've talked about leaving bed. You're having a bad time, and you've said our feelings, our emotions are what dictate how productive we'll be, the kind
Yeah.
of day, the kind of work we'll execute. So I'm struggling, and I'm struggling to leave bed. How do I find a balance emotionally, realistically? Give me a simple solution.
Yeah. So there's a tool we like to use in
Yes.
emotional intelligence coaching, and it's a tool called VET.
Okay.
So VET is an acronym, and it stands for 3 things: validate, explore, transform.
Okay.
So the first thing we need to learn to do is to validate our emotions.
Right.
Because when you are feeling overwhelmed,
Yeah.
and then you just tell yourself, get over it, move on.
Move on with life.
It's not helping.
Right.
You need to take a moment to actually validate and tell yourself it is okay to feel
bad.
overwhelmed.
Right.
It is okay to feel as though I just want to put my head back under the covers and go back to bed. So validate your emotions. Validate them without judgment. Because we have a habit of judging. Remember, bad, good.
Yeah.
So already I'm feeling over, oh, that's a bad thing. Oh my gosh, why am I feeling this way? What's wrong with me? Oh my gosh, I'm such a failure. And so you spiral. Validate your emotions.
Yeah.
I'm feeling overwhelmed. It's okay, Mucha. It's
Yeah.
okay to feel overwhelmed because you are human,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are not
A robot.
anything else but human.
Even robots
And
break
humans
down.
I know.
feel
Yeah.
exactly. So validate your emotion.
I see.
The
Yes.
next thing is once you validate it, explore it. Emotions are data. Anyone who knows me will tell you I say that over
and over.
over and over. Because for me, I think it's the pivotal part of emotional intelligence. Emotions are data.
Right.
So explore. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I just want to Go back under the covers.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah.
What's happened?
Yeah.
And it's exploring again with curiosity.
Yeah.
Curiosity is a very powerful emotion.
Right.
Curiosity is an emotion that pulls you towards because you're willing to explore because you're curious,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You know, curiosity is one of those things that children have that make them the adventurous beings they are.
Yeah.
And it's something that we kind of kill off as we get older.
Yeah.
So be curious. Why am I feeling? Track back in your mind. What is it? What happened yesterday? What happened last week? Why is it that I'm feeling overwhelmed?
Right.
And then as you explore the why, ask yourself, what does it mean?
Right.
What message is this overwhelm trying to give to me?
Right. Right.
Because sometimes it's just that you really are doing too much.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, that sounds like me.
I wanted to say, Arnold, I hope you're listening.
but I like that you're breaking it down like this, because I think without realizing, this is something that I find myself doing. Like my best friend was telling me the other day that the thing I appreciate about you is if something doesn't speak to your core purpose or your core value, you just work, like you can maybe fake it for a little while, but you will not allow yourself to do it. But I literally go through the same process that you're explaining. And you mentioned there was one which was transform.
Yes.
Now before you say, we do got to take a quick break.
Sure.
So as soon as we get back, we're going to keep going into that. And I also want to let you know it is 15 minutes past 9. So we're going to start taking some of your calls. I can see all of the new callers. And to Nelson, to Frank, thank you so much for all the calls that are coming through. We just wanted to give our esteemed guests a chance to give us these gems, and then we'll be sampling some of your views as soon as we get back. Don't go anywhere. We are the adults in the room. Talking about emotional intelligence at the workplace. We have Mucha Mlingo, who is the founder and lead changemaker of PTS Africa, here to discuss the importance of emotional intelligence, not just in life, but in the workplace as well. Now, before we went on this break, you were giving us a breakdown, and there was still one more character that you wanted to break down, which was T for transform. Yes.
So what happens is, as you begin to mine the insights from what you're feeling, you actually start on that journey of transformation.
Right.
Because you're no longer seeing this emotion as an enemy. You're seeing it as an ally.
Okay.
And so the T is transform. Because we have the power to transform. We can transform our emotions. And a lot of the work of transformation begins by just accepting, by understanding that this is an ally. It is an asset that I'm using.
Right.
And so I'm able to use my emotions as a strategic resource.
Yeah.
Right.
see.
And then I begin to transform. And sometimes transforming is by taking action, taking that first step. Taking that first step.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so and as you take that first step, you start to gain momentum. And as you move, your emotions change.
Right.
So validate, explore, and transform. And that's how you help yourself to get unstuck.
I see.
When you find yourself stuck in those emotions that are not really serving you well.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to ask a question specifically around online interaction and social media. We all know how social media can get the better of us sometimes. We've heard the term keyboard warriors, people who just allow their emotions to be dictated as they type. So in efforts to kind of implement emotional intelligence in this space, how can we be more emotionally intelligent, specifically when it comes to like social media?
I think the biggest advice I would give someone for social media is to take a pause.
Okay.
Take a pause.
Yeah.
Take a pause, because when we are the emotional part of the brain is powerful enough to override rational thinking.
Okay.
Right. So you can go into what we call a state of emotional hijack,
Right.
where your emotions take over.
Right.
So just take a break. And in that moment, you're not thinking.
Right.
You're just acting. You're just feeling.
Right.
And those emotions are powering you and fueling you, because emotions fuel our behavior.
Right. Yeah.
So take a pause.
I see.
Take a pause. And I know that for so many young people, this doesn't make sense. It's a free world. I should be able to say what I want. Yeah. It's not true.
I see.
Unless you are an activist. Unless you're an activist, right?
Yeah.
So if you're an activist, then that is your tool of trade.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Going to war on social media.
Yeah.
If you're someone who runs a business, if you're someone who wants to be employed somewhere someday, stop.
You have
Take
to
a pause.
you have to be able to hold yourself back.
Because the reality is, people are looking to see.
Right.
They are checking. They are going online. They are checking. Like I said, there's people who've signed a contract. I'm starting work on Monday.
Yeah.
Maybe even at a party, a going away party.
Yeah.
And then that work doesn't happen because usually they tell you that they've accepted you subject to your references.
Yes.
In those references, someone goes to your social media page and they can track back as far as wherever. Of course.
From the beginning of your profile.
Yes. And they see either the rants that you go on and look, I mean, it's good to be passionate. It really is. It's good to be passionate, but find a way to channel that passion.
Yeah.
Be very careful about what you put online.
Right.
So I would say take a pause. And when you take a pause, you allow the rational part of your brain to kind of kick in and just temper your emotions a little.
Yes.
There have been many times I've picked up my phone to start.
And then you have to, hey, let me just.
And then I put my phone down.
I know.
I tell myself I'm still running a business.
Right. I still have a reputation.
I still have a reputation.
Yes.
And so unless that is what you're trying to do, so maybe you are someone who, you're trying to excite people.
Yes.
Take a pause.
I like it. 0719-012-600 is the number to call. We want to sample some of your views. Hello, Nelson. Hello. Nelson, kindly reduce the volume of your radio so we can hear you better.
Okay.
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm fine.
Fantastic. Thank you for calling.
Yes.
Do you have a question for our esteemed guest?
Yes, I have a question.
Please do. Please ask away.
Okay. Today we are discussing about emotional intelligence.
Yes.
How can we correct emotional intelligence with self-esteem?
You're saying how can we correct emotional intelligence in?
Correct.
How can we connect?
Correlate.
Oh, correlate. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're saying how can we correlate emotional intelligence to?
Self-esteem.
To self-esteem. So is there a correlation between emotional intelligence and self-esteem? Okay, that's a very good question.
Very good.
Thank you so much for calling in for that question. I think that what emotional intelligence does is it starts us on this journey of self-awareness. And as we become self-aware, we're able to dig deeper to understand some of those deep-rooted behaviors, deep-rooted challenges, and to identify if perhaps we have those issues of a low self-esteem.
Right.
So I think for me, emotional intelligence helps you because you become more aware of yourself, and in that awareness, you begin to figure out what you can do about it. Because all of these things are not fixed.
Yeah,
they're not fixed. I can do better. I can improve. There are things that I can do to increase my self-esteem, right?
Yeah.
To increase my confidence. But I need to actually do the work. And earlier we talked about this idea that self-awareness is hard work.
Yeah.
And it is uncomfortable work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it is as you are self-aware and you peel back the layers that you actually begin to identify that actually maybe the reason why I'm always putting other people down is because I feel inadequate.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
So self-awareness gives you the tools to be able to actually understand who you are at your core, what your identity is, and what challenges you are masking with the behavior you put on the outside.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, I hope that answered your question, Nelson. She's very thorough.
Yes. In addition,
Yes.
in self-esteem, we find that the confidence in oneself,
Yes.
own worth and self-respect.
Yes.
But in emotional intelligence, there's the ability or a skill.
Right.
Someone needs to manage the emotion of oneself,
Yes.
others, and let us say abroad. A
Right.
group of organization.
Right. Yes. Yes.
It's abroad. I love the topic.
Wow, we're so glad, and we hope that you're learning a thing or two today.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nelson. We really appreciate you calling.
Yeah.
Take care. Have a great night. 0719-012-600 is the number to call. Now, I can see some additional callers, but we are almost approaching a break. So we're going to endeavor to answer your calls and still get as much information from our esteemed guest as we possibly can before we wrap up the show and she, heads home. So, yes.
So what question I want to ask, and please, be very, as always, simple.
To the point.
I'm a big believer of simplicity.
Right.
Life doesn't have to be difficult.
No,
Things don't have to be complicated.
Yes.
So for those who lead teams, how can they keep an eye out for emotional intelligence? People who are struggling to maintain this balance. How can they, what are the things that they should look for? What are the signs and the symptoms of your team struggling to manage and maintain balance and boundaries with emotional intelligence?
I think that's such an important, question.
Yeah.
And especially at a time like this, because people are struggling. Right? People are struggling. So I would say, 3 things. The first is, as a team leader, you need to be more intentional about having regular team meetings.
Wow.
It's really important. It's no longer just a nice to have. It should be regular, that regularly you're getting the team together. If the team is working remotely, then online, right? But regularly get the team together and make sure that you are really cultivating a space of safety.
Right.
A space of safety. So that's the first thing.
What does define safety?
Yes. So I was coming to that with the second point. So the second point is, as a leader, you need to be vulnerable. So you need to set the standard by being open about how you are feeling. Because here's the thing.
Wow.
You may call those team meetings forever.
Yeah.
People aren't going to say.
Yeah.
They show up.
Yeah.
They do what is required. Here's the agenda. We go through the agenda. We're done.
Yeah.
But that's not the purpose of the meeting. The purpose of the meeting is to ensure that people feel safe enough to be able to have conversations about how they are struggling.
Right.
How do they do that? You provide the safety by sharing that you are struggling, and not in a fake way.
Yeah.
So it needs to be genuine,
Yeah.
which is why I said you need to be vulnerable.
Yes.
As a leader, you need to lead by example,
Yeah.
by sharing how you are struggling, the things that you are doing, right, to be able to navigate this season.
Yeah.
And what you will find is, over time, as you consistently share and really create this space where it is open, you will find that people will start, and not necessarily share that they have a specific problem, but that's when you start getting those "I'm asking for a friend" hashtags. You're opening the environment for people to just have that conversation.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And these are not your regular meetings about work. These are meetings where we are meeting to connect as a team. We are meeting to see where everyone is, to take the emotional temperature.
Yes.
The third thing is, as a leader, now more than ever, you need to be connecting individually with your team. It's not enough to be doing the team stuff, because there are many of the team who will never say anything in those environments. Never.
Yeah.
So you need, as a leader, to figure out how you're going to connect with everyone.
Right.
And if you have a very large team, then utilize the layers. I'm assuming if you have a large team, then there's a supervisor or a team leader.
Right.
So coach your team leader on ensuring that they are connecting with the team. But we must be connecting with people individually. And connecting with people individually is not calling them to ask them how far they are with the work.
Right.
It's calling to say, how are you doing?
Right, I see. Okay. You're really giving us some very valuable information. So if you are a boss, a CEO, a hiring manager, if you're in HR, I hope you're paying attention. When I do my pickup line of the day, I always say, get your pens, your papers, and your erasers, just in case I misspell anything. Make sure that you're doing that, because we're giving knowledge that could really impact your organization. We are the adults in the room. Don't go anywhere. The adults in the room, and we have a very, very special guest in the building with us, an emotional intelligence coach that goes by the name of Mucha Mlingo. She's the founder and lead change maker of PTS Africa. Now, I want to ask you a question, something that you said earlier in passing. You mentioned that you're currently running a conference. I would love to learn a little bit more about that and what sort of inspired this conference. Are you able to expand on that a little bit?
Yes. So we are running the EQ for Africa conference, and it's our 3rd year.
Oh, wow.
It's an annual conference. It's a baby that is growing that I'm so excited about.
Right.
And the conference came about because I attended in 2017. 6 Seconds had their Global Emotional Intelligence Summit.
Right.
And I was inspired by the rich conversations that happened there.
Right.
And then in 2018, one of my colleagues who works in Nigeria had what he called the African Emotional Intelligence Conference, and really came away from there saying Kenya is next. We are going to host this conference.
Oh, wow.
And so we started in 2019.
Wow.
So this is the 3rd one, and our theme this year is a whole new world.
Right. Okay.
And it's this idea that as we move into this whole new world, there is a writer, her name is Arundhati Roy, and she talks about this idea that the pandemic is a portal.
Okay.
And we have the choice as to how we step through this portal.
Okay.
And so for us, we felt this whole new world, as I'm stepping through the portal, what are the skills that I will need
Right.
for this whole new world?
Okay.
So that I can thrive in this whole new world. So I can make the choice. Yes, we have baggage. Yes, we have lost. Yes, we have been challenged. We have been put into the washing machine of life, and we feel like we've been on a high spin.
High spin, yes.
Right? So how do I pick myself up and step forward?
Right.
So the conference today was day 1, and it was phenomenal.
I can
And it's
imagine.
running over 3 days, and it's really just looking at what do I need to move and thrive in this whole new world.
Right.
So day 1 was purpose. So today we're talking about purpose. And the reality is, for us to move forward, we need to have a clear why. For us to be able to move forward consistently, we need to have a clear why. Your why is what gets you out of bed when things are tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so today we're talking about purpose and how emotional intelligence underpins purpose.
see.
Tomorrow we're talking about change. How do you surf the waves of change?
Right. Right.
How can you use emotional intelligence to be able to navigate from what you're feeling, the overwhelm, to an emotion that will serve you better
Right.
as you move forward?
Right.
So tomorrow we're talking about change. And then day 3, we're talking about well-being.
Okay.
Because we know that we have been struggling.
Yeah.
So how do I build the mental and emotional muscle to be able to deal with the challenges we faced?
Right.
And so it's been an exciting journey as we facilitated the conference, and we call it the EQ for Africa conference.
Right.
And
love
it's
it.
something that I'm so excited about, so excited to host. And this year we're hosting it in collaboration with all the 6 Seconds preferred partners across the African continent.
Right.
And so we have, co-hosts from South Africa, from Nigeria, and from here in Kenya.
Right.
And we've been working together, and we have a phenomenal group of individuals who are, facilitating the different sessions. We have breakouts where we dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
We have panel discussions. It's a fantastic 3 days.
Wow. This sounds like my territory for sure.
I know.
I'd become a nerd over it. I'm telling you. So
Yes.
so-
Kwanzaa, on the conversation of change tomorrow, I'd
Yes.
love to know how
Yes.
that goes.
Yes, yes. So I guess in the spirit of your career and everything that you've done up until this point, I noticed that there's been quite a big emphasis on working specifically on the continent for you. What I guess being a person of color and obviously being African as well, what inspired you to set your sights on the African continent as opposed to any other nation or continent?
So, I mentioned that I'm originally from Zimbabwe. And
Yes.
growing up in Zimbabwe, I was fortunate enough to go to private schools. And I remember being very un-African.
Right.
Right? In school, we spoke English.
Yes.
We only ever spoke our mother tongue. Shana, if you wanted to gossip about
Yes.
the people around us
Yes.
who couldn't speak that
Yes.
language. But otherwise, we spoke English. We thought it was so cool to be as, and actually, it's funny because Zimbabwe is a British colony, but we like to be as American as possible.
Yes.
Right.
I moved to the UK when I was 15. And suddenly, I realized where I was from.
Right. It was when you
suddenly
stepped outside.
Because suddenly I'm not from here.
Yeah.
When you meet anyone, it's either your accent or the color of your skin or your name.
Yeah.
So where are you from?
Yeah.
And that really got me thinking about, for sure, where am I from?
Yeah.
And I think that began my love affair with all things African.
Right. Right.
And one of the reasons why we moved to Kenya when we moved here was because we felt we would rather live. Kenya's not our home. We're not from Kenya, but we'd rather live on the continent.
Yes.
So I've had this, love for the continent. And when I look at some of our challenges, I know that emotional intelligence is the solution. I really know it is. And that's why the EQ for Africa conference, because I know that the solutions we need are available to us, and emotional intelligence is one of them.
Yeah.
And I like to think of myself as a catalyst or a change maker. And I feel that, there is so much work to be done on the continent.
Yeah.
There's so much opportunity as we rise.
Yeah.
And emotional intelligence is one of those skills that will help us. So I think that's why my focus has been on the continent.
Yes.
And then the other thing is because, this work of emotional intelligence is so common in the West. There's so much data, so much research around it. And there's very little that is African based.
Right.
So when I became a 6 Seconds preferred partner, one of the things I said is I am committed to African research.
Yes.
Right. I want to be able to publish case studies that show that this stuff is not just Mzungu stuff. It works for us too.
Yes.
It's important for us too.
Yes.
In our own context. Right. So currently, I'm really excited. We'll be launching a report that we did for women in leadership.
Okay.
We have a case study that we're working on that we're going to be publishing as well. So I'm just like, I'm so excited about those pieces of work.
Yeah.
And, my goal is to regularly contribute to the body of work around emotional intelligence and why it's important for us as Africans. So I think the conference is not the only thing.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone who's interested in finding out more about the conference can go to the conference website, which is just www.eqforafrica.com, and that's a 4.
Right. Oh, number 4.
Yes, the number 4. So www.eq, the number 4, Africa.com.
Right.
I also have a podcast I do, EQ at Work.
Okay.
Yeah. So where I talk about what we're talking about.
Literally what we're talking about. Yes.
How you can leverage the power of emotional intelligence so that you can thrive in your career. And I am an African.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I have that understanding. Yes, I lived in the West for a long time, but I think my formative years were on the continent.
Yeah.
And so I feel as though, I have a message, and I feel like, my role is really to just help us to think through how we can use our emotions, because for the longest time we have ignored them.
Yeah.
I think that's really why I'm excited about doing work across the continent.
Yeah. And I think there's also value in having been lived outside of the continent and had these experiences and actually literally seen if we were to take this experience and apply it home, how impactful it could be. Because obviously we know that there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of highly educated people on the continent, there's a lot of resources on the continent. And if we can figure out how to leverage that, we can really start to turn the tide in terms
100%.
of our situation on an economic, financial level,
100%.
etc. Yeah. Now, if you are just joining us, we are the adults in the room. We have a very special guest in the building. Mucha Mlingo is here talking to us about emotional intelligence in the workplace. We're going to take another quick break, but as soon as we get back, we're going to start sampling some more of your views. We just wanted to make sure we give her time to give us all this information. Don't go anywhere. I know you had a question for our guest.
Yes.
Yes.
How do you... Okay. We live in a society where we cannot live alone. We must have friendships.
Yes.
Hey. And amongst friendships, sometimes you might experience people who have a higher level of emotional intelligence than the other. In friendship settings, how can you tell that someone is struggling and they really, really need some support? So we spoke about the teams and it begins from the leadership.
Yeah.
So now this is mambo kwa grao,
Yeah.
kawaida life.
Yeah.
How do you manage this?
So I think one of the first, not necessarily in order, right?
Yes.
But one of the first things I would say is, often when people are struggling, they retreat into themselves.
Right.
So when you find that you have a friend who used to come out when you go out, used to, when you say, let's go for coffee, they're open to go, but all of a sudden they're just not available. And it's not because of something that's going on. Because, sometimes we go through phases where we're not available because either work is really crazy, but it's not that. They're just by themselves. You ask them, what are you doing? I'm just home. They're just not socializing, not interacting as much. When we're struggling, we have a tendency to go inward.
Right.
So I think for me, that's something that we ought to look out for in our friends.
Yeah.
You know, where someone, they've changed in terms of how they interact. They don't want to socialize.
Yeah.
You call them, they just don't really want to speak. You send them messages, they don't really respond.
Yes.
And especially where someone has previously been responsive, when you call, they answer. So that's one thing. Another thing is mood swings. So you find someone has really high highs, right? They call you, let's go, la 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 la, and the next minute they have really low lows.
Right.
That's another sign that someone is really struggling to navigate their emotions. And either the lows or the highs are something that they may be putting on just to try and kind of pull themselves out. So that's another sign where
Right.
you just find that there's just swinging from one end of the pendulum to the other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And with that sometimes is, being overly sensitive, more than normal,
Yeah.
or overly critical, more than normal.
Right.
Right. So the idea is with our friends, it's really just the things that, okay, this is a little different.
Yeah.
Another thing that can show that someone is struggling is a change in their eating habits.
Oh, okay.
So someone, when we're highly stressed, some of us eat more, overeat, start eating things we didn't eat before. So you
Yeah.
find a friend who was always very health conscious, suddenly is living on junk food.
Right. Right.
Right. Those are some of the things that you kind of look out for,
Mm-hmm.
or not eating at all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, because some people when they're stressed, they don't eat, they don't have an appetite.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. And then the last thing I would say is another potential sign is when people aren't sleeping.
Ah, right.
Right. So they're just they are suffering from insomnia.
Right.
So either you find that you look at their social media pages, their random posts are like 2 a.m, 3 a.m,
Yeah.
or they are WhatsApping. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
you just pick up that okay. What time
Something
did you
feels
sleep,
off.
right?
Yeah.
So I think with our friends, those are some of the things that we can look out for that really help us to show that someone is just out of balance.
Yeah.
And then when we're supporting, and you didn't ask this, but when we're supporting our friends,
Yes.
I think the first thing is to don't give up. Don't
Right.
take it personally.
Right.
If your friend's not talking to you, if your friend's not answering your calls, if your friend, don't give up, because especially if someone's now slipped into depression,
Yeah.
you could be the difference between life and death
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
Right. So don't give up. And it's you sometimes feel like, why am I the one making all the effort? This person is not. Understand that this could actually be a challenge.
Yes.
Right. It could be that this person is not in a good space. So I think the first thing is just don't give up. Be persistent. Be that friend who keeps calling, who keeps messaging, even when they're not responding or when they talk, it's for 2 minutes, who just shows up
Yeah.
at their house. And then don't try and fix them.
Yeah, I wanted to
Yeah,
ask
don't
that.
try and fix
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
As a friend, sometimes
Yeah.
you just need to sit with them.
Yeah. And just give them that support.
Sit.
Yeah.
I'm just here.
Yeah.
Or go and do practical things. Go and cook a meal that evening. Go, if you find that the house is a bit of a mess, just don't go there to grill them. Hey, you've not been calling me. Why are you
Yeah.
not calling? What's wrong with you? Why are you not eating?
Yeah.
No. Because if someone's not in a good space, that just makes them feel worse.
Yeah, yeah, understand. What you're saying makes a lot of sense. Now, for those of us that want to learn more about you, please give us all of your plugs. Where can we reach you? What are the things that we can get involved in? What is it, the things that you're involved in? Feel free.
Thank you. Thank you. So as I mentioned, we currently have the conference, the EQ for Africa conference, and we still have 2 days. So
Yes.
that is something that is available. Just reach out to us. You can visit the website, eqforafrica.com, and find more details. Reach out to us, send us a message through the website. I also have a podcast, and I share fortnightly conversations around emotional intelligence at work, and it's just called EQ at Work.
Right.
So EQ, the signal work, and you can find it across the different podcasting platforms. So
Right.
Google Podcasts, recently added to Amazon Music,
nice.
yes,
Nice.
and on Apple,
Yes.
So you can find those, online. You can also just engage with me on social media. like I said, I feel I'm living out my purpose, and one of the things I do is just educate.
Right.
So on a daily basis, there's something I'm sharing online that is helpful. So my social media handle is very simple, at Mucha Mlingo, across all the platforms. So LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. My personal favorites are LinkedIn and Instagram. So those are the spaces where you'll find I am more often.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And then the last thing is I have a Facebook group. So I have a closed Facebook group, and we do an EQ challenge every week. So every Monday I do a Facebook Live.
Right.
And I share the EQ challenge for the week.
Okay.
And we support individuals to practice that challenge, and we have conversations around that challenge and, how you're doing. And every Friday, people share their insights on, how they found doing the challenge.
Right.
So I think those are the different ways that you can, people can connect with me.
Right.
Yes. And I'm very accessible. Just reach out to me on social media.
Right.
I'm more than happy to connect.
I see. So when you say Facebook challenges, could you give us an example of one of those challenges?
Sure. So one week we did a challenge where each person had to go and ask, I think it was, if I remember correctly, 2 friends, 2 work colleagues, 2 work colleagues, someone who's at your level, 2 subordinates, to give you feedback.
Right.
And the question to ask them was, what one thing do you see me do that you feel is holding me back?
Okay.
And so the idea was, go and ask.
That's powerful.
And as you ask, sift it. Now, when you ask for feedback, it's not everything that comes that's useful.
Yes.
But sift it.
Yes.
What are some of the things, especially the stuff that is common?
Yes.
Right? So that's one week we did a challenge. Another week we did a challenge around practicing the pause.
Okay.
So when you find yourself in moments of conflict, pause.
I see.
Take a breath.
Yes.
So yeah, those are
Count
the
to
kind of
10?
things we do. Yes.
Yeah.
And so what we do is daily, we just kind of give tips on how you can do the actual challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute honor and a privilege to have you here. I know that there are many people out there who are listening who have taken so much value from what you're saying. Again, this is something that, and I can see why you're redirecting your efforts to the continent, because you're right in saying this is something that might be studied, and there's statistics and there's data that we can analyze abroad, but there's not as much study that's actually done on the continent. And having this space, having this environment where we can actually have these conversations, we can learn and we can kind of better our skill set. Because you're right in saying it's a skill set, which means it's something that you can attain, something that you can train yourself to develop over time. And I like the idea of these challenges, the weekly challenges, which kind of force you to put one foot in front of the other. Even if you're falling forward, you'd rather fall forward than fall backwards. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed the show today. This is we had our guest Mucha Mlingo, who is the founder and lead change maker of PTS Africa, an emotional intelligence coach. We hope you learn a thing or two. We appreciate your time, and we shall see you back here tomorrow from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Monday to Friday. We are the adults in the room. Good night.